Derby County face a huge summer transfer window, but what are their transfer window plans as Derby County and John Eustace prepare for life back in the EFL Championship after surviving the relegation zone last term? Now, obviously, for Derby County, we know there's going to be a lot of talks around formations, around systems and styles of play, and we're starting to take a look at how this Derby County side could shake up for John Eustace in a range of different formations. Now, obviously, we've seen Derby County shake up in a range of different formations since John Eustace came in, ranging from a 4-4-2 to a 4-2-3-1 to a 3-4-3 and a 3-5-2. But which formation will it be that John Eustace goes with heading into this upcoming campaign? Now, obviously, if we look at the depth chart right now, it is not looking too great as I record this video on the 19th of May, with a lot of bodies needed in midfield. Still need some quality options in the wide areas. The forward line certainly is not good enough yet, and obviously that back four needs a couple of additions, with the likes of Curtis Nelson and Sondre Langas missing at the start of the season, and Callum Elder and Ben Osborne being a little bit on the injury prone side. But what will Derby County plan to do in this transfer window? Now, if we look at some of the links that have come up across the course of this season already, you've got Cody Drammer, you've got Ricardo Santos, Camille Conte, Oscar Frulo. You've got some big names being linked to Derby County. Cody Drammer, obviously, reportedly having a bid rejected for a loan term at Derby County, which sort of, to me, pushes Derby County into that sort of back four conversation where, because obviously Cody Drammer can play on either side, whether it be right back or left back, which would be massively important for Derby County in any sort of formation really where we're playing a back four. And obviously you look then at the conversation with Callum Elder and Ben Osborne. We know that both players have suffered some big injuries over the course of their careers. Ben Osborne sort of has lots of little niggly ones that keeps him out for 2 to 3 weeks. Callum Elder reportedly broke his leg in 2 places at the end of last season, but ultimately there was no confirmation of that from the club. You then look at the right back position where Cody Drammer could fill in, and you've got Kane Wilson, Joe Ward and Ryan Niambi. Niambi and Ward both had very injury hit seasons last term, with Kane Wilson also having his injury problems as well across the course of that year. And you sort of then start to look and go, well, are Derby County looking to sort of maybe move on a Joe Ward, maybe move on a Ryan Niambi? And I think that could potentially be an option. Now, when we look at what the transfer plans could be, you're sort of going to look at sort of adding to that midfield where you're going to want a couple of extra creative bodies, you're going to want a couple of high energy players similar to that of Liam Thompson, and you're going to want a couple of destroyers like Ibu Adams. And that's where I believe that the link to Camille Conte has come from. Not necessarily that he's as good as Derby County need or as good as Ibu Adams is, but it's certainly an option which adds to that depth chart in midfield. It's not necessarily one that I'd personally go for. Now, when you're talking about sort of having a dictator in that midfield, you're looking at a player like Oscar Frulo to come and take the reins off the back four, off the back five, and really make things happen and get the ball into your creative sparks like Kenzo Heldmine, like Corey Blackett-Taylor, like Mendes Lang as you're sort of attacking forward. And for me, Oscar Frulo would be perfect in that sort of situation. Now, obviously, there is going to be the ongoing conversation about the future of Harrison Armstrong across the course of this summer window. And I do believe that John Eustace will leave a squad slot available until he physically can't, in my opinion, as Harrison Armstrong has been a massive part of this Derby County side since joining on loan in January, and I think he could have a big impact if he was to sign again this summer. But Derby County can't wait until deadline day to get that deal done. They've got to make sure they make moves early on in the window so that the midfield starts to pack out. You start to bring in those creative bodies. You start to bring in those worker bees, as I like to call them, and you bring in those destroyers that are able to read the game very well, win the ball back and get the ball to those creative players. And that's something that Derby County are missing. You also look at the wide areas and what are going to be sort of key parts of John Eustace's team if he does go to that back four, with obviously needing a couple of wingers in those circumstances. And I don't think Mendes Lang or Jackson were good enough last year. Corey Blackett-Taylor obviously has his injury issue. So you're then looking at bringing in maybe 2 or 3 wide options who can also, maybe one of them can also play through the middle as well, which opens up that conversation for who are they going to be. There's obviously been a lot of talk about Tyrese Dolan since John Eustace came in. There's obviously a lot of other wingers out there who Derby County could go and pick up. But is there really any that Derby County can afford, which is going to really improve this squad? And that is the big question on the lips of many fans at the moment. Now, you look at the striker position, and at the moment it's just Lars Jørgen Selverson and Dejan Brown, which for me we don't know how good Silverson truly is. Came in, got injured quite early, did score a goal up against Cardiff, which was a really nice goal, but then picked up an injury. I believe it was against QPR in John Eustace's first game. So we never really saw him sort of hit the levels that he probably could have because he didn't have a full pre-season. Dejan Brown obviously got injured. I think he showed some good spells across the course of the season when he did play. Obviously, the goal against Hull City, the goal against Leyton Orient, some really good goals in there for Dejan Brown, but ultimately not enough minutes. So, with that all being said, where are Derby County going to be looking in this summer transfer window? Now, for me, at minimum, we need one centre-half, depending on the plan with Jake Rooney. If Jake Rooney is to stay at Derby County, I think one centre-half, hopefully Nat Phillips, would be enough for Derby County to see through until January. Obviously, with Curtis Nelson and Sondre Langas being out for the start of the season, they really do need an extra option in there. Now, what about the right-back position? We obviously already know they're looking at Cody Drammer, who can play in both positions. But what does that mean for Joe Ward? I think we could be seeing Joe Ward depart this summer. There was reports in January that he was heading to Mansfield Town. He'd been to have a look around the club, and a deal had been agreed. But then obviously we suffered injuries to Kane Wilson and Ryan Niambi within the space of a couple of days of each other, which meant that deal then didn't go through. But Joe Ward then, I think, only played one game. And only sat on the bench a couple of times after that. So whether he picked up an injury after that fact, I'm not entirely sure. In the left-back position, obviously we've got Craig Forsyth, who is in discussions over a new contract. But where does Ben Osborne fit in under John Eustace? Is he going to be in the midfield? Is he going to be at left-back? I'm not entirely sure. And if I'm completely honest with you, I'm not entirely sure where Ben Osborne's best position truly is. And I think that is a big problem that Derby County faced this summer, is figuring out where you can fit in a player like Ben Osborne. I do think he's going to be a backup option, but obviously he's got a lot of ability, and that's why he's played in the Premier League, and that's what Derby County need to see. Now, for me, we do need another left-back. Obviously, Callum Elder and Craig Forsyth, potentially the options there with Ben Osborne as well. But for me, there has to be another younger option that Derby County can sort of take forward and build with as they look to hopefully become a team challenging for promotion in this division. Now, you can obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comments as well on that position. Now, obviously in midfield, if you add Ben Osborne and you put Liam Thompson in there with a star next to his name, because obviously he's in talks, you've got the conversation of, we've got four midfielders. You've got two workers in Ozzy and Tomo. You've got a destroyer in Ibu Adams, and you've got a creator in Kenzo Holdmine. For me, we need another destroyer who can read the game, win tackles, things like that. And we probably need two more creators. Oscar Frulo maybe in that sort of creator/dictator type role, and hopefully bring in Harrison Armstrong again to see how he can develop maybe a little bit further up the pitch. As Everton fans have told me, he is more of an advanced midfielder than a sitter, whereas for Derby, he played most of his games as that sitting midfielder. Obviously in the wide positions, as I mentioned, I think 2 to 3 new players in those areas would be really good for Derby. Hopefully one of them can sort of be a player who can play through the middle and in both wide areas, which obviously then gives a little bit more versatility to sort of the depth chart and things like that. And I do think Derby County need to go out and sign a number 9. The big question will be the futures of Dejan Brown and Jake Rooney. Obviously, if Jake Rooney was to leave, we probably need 2 centre-halves. If Dejan Brown leaves, you probably need 2 strikers. Now, I think as we look at the depth chart today, I think there's 7 slots available as per the EFL registration rules, which I think if you add in Thompson, add in Fozzie, that takes you down to 5. You probably then realistically aren't getting 3 wingers. You're probably getting 2. You're probably getting only 1 striker, maybe 1 midfielder, and maybe 1 centre-half. But you can obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, hit the like button as well to push this video to brand new audiences, and I'll catch you in the next one.